Look, I need to tell you something that just broke, and Blue Jays fans, you're going to want to hear every single word of this because it could reshape everything we thought we knew about this offseason. John Morosi just dropped a bombshell report on MLB Network about Ketel Marte's availability, and Toronto's name is all over this thing. But there's a wrinkle in this story that makes it way more complicated than just another trade rumor, and we need to talk about what this actually means for the future of this roster. So here's what we know. Morosi is reporting there's roughly a 50-50 shot that Ketel Marte gets moved this winter. The Diamondbacks are fielding calls, teams are checking in, and among those teams making inquiries are your Toronto Blue Jays. Now, this is where it gets really interesting from a logistical standpoint. Toronto is not on Marte's limited no-trade list. That's crucial because it means Arizona could theoretically ship him north of the border without needing his approval. That eliminates a huge negotiating hurdle right off the bat. But if Ross Atkins and the front office actually go through with this, we've got to confront the elephant in the room. What on earth happens to Bichette? Let me give you the full picture on who Ketel Marte actually is as a player because his resume is pretty ridiculous. The guy just turned 32 about 6 weeks ago, so we're talking about a player right in his absolute prime. The numbers speak for themselves. Career .823 OPS, 171 homers, 281 batting average, and over 35 wins above replacement for his career. His OPS plus sits at 121, which tells you he's been 21% better than league average throughout his entire career. These aren't good numbers. These are elite numbers sustained over a long period. But the last 2 seasons specifically, Marte has been operating at an MVP level. Last year alone, he finished 3rd in National League MVP voting behind only Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto. Let that sink in for a moment. He put up an .893 OPS and has been worth over 10 wins above replacement combined in just the past 2 years. When someone is producing at that rate, you don't ignore it. His underlying metrics on Baseball Savant confirm everything the traditional stats tell you. Expected batting average and expected slugging are both outstanding. For a Blue Jays lineup desperately searching for guys who make consistent contact, don't strike out constantly, and can work counts, Marte is basically the perfect profile. Defensively, he grades out in the 74th percentile for outs above average. His arm is a tick below average, and his foot speed has declined to the 29th percentile, but you're still getting someone who contributes everywhere. Now let's talk contract because this is where Marte becomes even more appealing beyond just his on-field value. Next season, he's making $16 million. Read that again. A player who's getting MVP votes and producing at an all-star level is earning $16 million. And the following year, it drops to $12 million, then climbs to 2022 and 22 again through his age 36 season. By the time we get to those later years, that salary could legitimately look like a massive bargain compared to what comparable players will be commanding in free agency. He's got a player option for $11.5 million at age 37 that he may or may not pick up depending on how his body holds up. But even if he exercises it, you're still getting incredible value relative to market prices for this caliber of production. That contract structure is precisely why Arizona would demand significant pieces in return. According to baseball trade values, Marte carries a value around 60 points, which in practical terms means you're probably giving up a top 3 prospect in your system, possibly even your number 1 guy, plus additional components. The Diamondbacks aren't tearing it down completely. They're doing more of a retool, which means they want major league ready talent that can help them compete soon, not just high upside teenagers who won't debut for 3 or 4 years. For Toronto to actually land Marte, we're looking at a package headlined by someone like Arjun Nimala potentially, plus other quality assets. That's not cheap by any stretch, but you're acquiring a proven all-star on a below-market deal for multiple years. Here's where things get messy from a roster construction standpoint, and this is the part that genuinely has me conflicted about whether this trade makes sense for Toronto. Marte is essentially locked into second base at this stage of his career. Sure, his position eligibility technically includes shortstop and center field, but the reality is he hasn't played those spots meaningfully in years. Last season was exclusively second base and designated hitter. In 2024, he played exactly 1 game at shortstop, 1. The last time he logged serious innings in center field was back in 2021 when he was still 27 and covered 71 games out there. He's 32 now. I'm skeptical about how much center field he realistically has left in the tank, and even if he could play out there occasionally, you'd probably prefer him in a corner spot anyway. That transition at his age with declining speed numbers is far from a sure thing. So if we acquire Marte and he's planted at second base, what happens with the rest of this infield? Let's think through this scenario step by step. Marte takes second base. Ernie Clement, who we just brought in last season and who looked really solid defensively at shortstop during his postseason audition, slides over to short. That leaves Bo Bichette without a natural home on the diamond. You can't stick Bo at third because he doesn't have the arm strength for it, and we've already got Addison Barger and other candidates there. You can't really put him in the outfield either because he lacks both the speed and the defensive instincts to handle it competently. Bo's defensive profile basically limits him to second base or shortstop, and if both those positions are occupied by Marte and Clement, where exactly does he play? The logical conclusion is that he doesn't play here anymore. Acquiring Marte essentially telegraphs that Bo Bichette isn't part of the long-term plan. Either management decides not to extend him and he walks in free agency, or they flip him in a separate deal to address other roster needs. That's a franchise-altering decision with enormous ramifications going forward. Here's my genuine perspective on all of this. I think the Blue Jays only make this move for Marte if they already know with certainty that Bo isn't coming back regardless. Maybe another organization has made Bo an offer he's seriously considering. Maybe Bo has communicated privately that he wants to hit free agency and see what he can get on the open market. Whatever the case, if the front office believes Bo is gone no matter what, then pivoting to Marte makes total sense strategically. But if there's any realistic chance of keeping Bo long-term, I'd lean toward prioritizing that instead. Yes, Marte is the superior all-around player right now. He's better with the glove, more consistent with the bat, and locked into a team-friendly contract. But Bo is only 27 years old. He's got potentially 5 or 6 more years of prime production in front of him. Despite his defensive shortcomings and questionable base running, he remains one of the best pure hitters in baseball when healthy. I'd rather gamble on the younger player with more upside and team control than surrender significant prospect capital for the older player entering the twilight of his career, even if Marte gives us 3 exceptional years before declining. Is that worth what we'd need to give up, plus losing Bo in the process? I'm not completely sold. That said, if we do end up acquiring Marte, I'm definitely not going to complain about it. He's an outstanding player who would instantly upgrade this lineup. Having Marte at second, Clement at short, Vlad at first, and whatever outfield mix we put together would form a really solid foundation. It just means accepting that the Bo chapter is over and committing to a different organizational direction. The other variable is whether Marte can actually handle occasional outfield duty if required. If he's willing and able to slide into left or right field when needed, that creates more positional flexibility and could theoretically allow both him and Bo to coexist. But given his age and declining speed metrics, I'm doubtful that's a sustainable long-term answer. Timing matters here too. Arizona wants to move Marte before April when his 10-5 rights kick in, giving him complete no-trade protection. That creates urgency and potentially gives Toronto some leverage in negotiations. The Diamondbacks can't let this drag out and risk losing their bargaining position, which means if something's going to happen, it needs to happen relatively soon. This is the kind of decision that defines an offseason and potentially sets the course for the next several years.